Subscribers. In this video we will talk about the top 15 common mistakes when installing and designing a video surveillance system for a private house, a cottage, or a summer house. So let's get started right away. The first common mistake is when you install the surveillance camera like this. What is the mistake here? It's that from below it will go like this. A person and faces. You won't see them, you will only see the back of the person's head. How to fix this mistake? You need to install a second camera facing the other direction. Then, no matter how a person passes through this area, you will see their face in any case. The same situation applies to the entrance group. Often the camera is installed like this, and here it can approach like this. A small truck can park and you won't see its license plate. How to fix this mistake? You need to install a second surveillance camera, then no matter how a vehicle passes here or how a person walks by, there will be no blind spot. Also, when you install only one camera on the side, there will always be a blind spot under the camera. Many people think they can lower the camera to eliminate this blind spot. Once they realize it's there. But when you lower it, you consequently can't see anything in the distance. Therefore, though the professional option involves installing 2 surveillance cameras on each side, if the budget is limited, then choose the most vulnerable spots on your property and install 2 cameras there, facing each other, to avoid making such a mistake. The second common mistake is when the surveillance camera is installed too high. This is often done by those who have a pole near their house or who have a sufficiently tall 2- or 3-story house, and it's convenient to place a camera to view a large area at once. The problem here is that you will see the top of a person's head, not their face, as shown in the diagram here. Such a surveillance camera can also be installed, but it should be an additional camera, not the main one. That is, there is surveillance for security, whose task is, accordingly, to capture faces and car license plates. There is surveillance for comfort. For comfort, such a camera can be installed to additionally see your entire area at once. The same applies when a car passes by here if the camera is mounted too high. This will also make it difficult for you to read the license plate. The optimal height for installing a surveillance camera is between 3 to 5 meters. I always recommend 3.5 meters. This is more than enough to keep the camera out of reach of vandals. And this height is sufficient to see the facial features of a person even wearing a cap. The next common mistake is installing surveillance cameras with poor clarity, poor detail, and poor night illumination. Cameras that cannot capture faces. There are 2 situations here. Sometimes you simply buy surveillance cameras, the cheapest ones, and you don't look at recording examples at all. You focus only on the price, and you only find out that the camera is of poor quality after you have actually installed it. Then there's the situation where you spend a long time choosing, researching, understanding what a sensor is, what a processor is. You choose based on the lens, but you didn't analyze your specific area. For example, you needed your camera to capture faces and car license plates from a distance of 20 meters. But you chose a surveillance camera that can see faces at a maximum of 2-3 meters. Beyond that, everything is blurry. Or like here, everything is pixelated. I have told you in various lessons that the sensor affects the quality of video recording. Primarily, 80% of the recording quality depends on it. Also, it's the processor. This is the device that processes data from the sensor and of course the lens, and naturally the quality of all materials used. Naturally, it's the resolution. And I won't burden you with unnecessary technical information. I will leave a table in the description of this video, which will primarily consist of data on distance. You need to analyze at your location what clarity in meters you require. That is, you roughly imagine where you will place your surveillance cameras, where they will be directed, and approximately analyze what clarity you need. Whether it's 5 meters, 10, 15 or 20 meters. That is, imagine that there is a camera, and at a distant section from this camera, some offense is occurring, intruders are breaking in, you need to see the face, and you need to understand this distance. And in this table, you simply look at the distance. Accordingly, choose the surveillance system that will match this distance. Because even with professional brands such as ISON, I do all the reviews. Using this brand as an example, it's professional equipment, and there are also many types of cameras. There are simpler cameras, cameras with zoom, without zoom, and 8 megapixel ones. They all use Sony sensors, And the simplest way to approach choosing your surveillance system is to understand what clarity in meters you need and make a selection. Accordingly, everything will be demonstrated with an example as usual using this table. The ISON brand equipment is like the iPhone in the world of surveillance. If you have a preference for another brand, try to select it accordingly by analogy with the specifications. A common mistake with your brand is when you install an uninterruptible power supply that is not specialized but just a regular computer one. Well, regarding the installation of an uninterruptible power supply, any surveillance specialist will tell you. And if you have already received some consultation, then you have already been informed that this is a basic necessity that is absolutely required. Because surveillance systems are low voltage systems. HD is always 12 volts, IP is always 48 or 52 volts if we are talking about professional equipment. And low voltage surveillance systems are very susceptible to damage during thunderstorms because voltage fluctuations occur during storms. It is necessary to install an uninterruptible power supply with a voltage fluctuation protection option. Basically, of course, these are always sources that have a battery. That is, the batteries ensure the operation of your surveillance system in the event of a power outage additionally. And a common mistake here is when a person takes and installs a regular computer uninterruptible power supply. And here it becomes a lottery. There are a huge number of types, many of them are budget friendly, and whether it will help or not is already a matter of chance. No one can ever guarantee you that your surveillance system won't get damaged with such an uninterruptible power supply. It also happens that a person has some kind of uninterruptible power supply or a stabilizer for the boiler or for the whole house. For video surveillance, it is necessary to use specialized uninterruptible power supplies specifically for video surveillance systems. Therefore, where you purchase your video surveillance, immediately ask about the uninterruptible power supply and buy it there right away. Then, accordingly, you can be confident that your equipment will work for years and there will be no problems with it, not even during thunderstorms. A typical situation with voltage fluctuations is not only thunderstorms, it is also when someone on the street turns on a welding machine, and it is when, in general, you have some kind of old, worn-out wiring outside. The next typical problem is when you haven't sealed the connector. All surveillance cameras have a cable right here. This is an outdoor surveillance camera. It is dust and moisture resistant, operates down to -60, but this connector needs to be properly sealed. Some people do this using makeshift methods like tape or electrical tape. The professional option involves installation of such bases. That is, the camera is mounted on this base and the connection is made inside this base. The camera is connected to the cable, which then goes to the video recorder. Many people think that if the surveillance camera is not placed in the open air, for example, if you install it under an awning somewhere outside, then such protection is not needed. And this is a mistake because after a year or a year and a half, due to humidity, the connector and the camera will start to oxidize. You'll throw it away and go buy a new one. A typical situation. First, the night illumination starts flickering, then it just stops turning on, and eventually the camera itself stops working. To prevent this, it is recommended to use specialized bases for mounting cameras. Here specifically, the camera I have in my hands is the ISON IP80QR. These are models of ready-made video surveillance systems. ISON Tron Pierrot, and the base is called ISON D390. I repeat, if you have preferences for certain brands, make sure to clarify about the base right away. And it is necessary to ensure proper sealing. Here in the picture, it shows how the camera should be positioned. On its base, then again, you can expect the camera to work for 5 or 10 years without any issues. The next common mistake is the installation of hidden surveillance. Hidden surveillance is prohibited in all countries. What is hidden surveillance? It is camouflage surveillance when you disguise it as something else. That is, for example, here it is shown under sensors, motion sensors, security sensors. In other words, this should not be done. The next common mistake is when you don't have wired internet at the site, but instead have internet provided through a SIM card, that is via 3G, 4G modems. And here you need to understand that the surveillance system must support working with 3G, 4G internet because there are specific IP addresses. And you need to find in the specifications of the equipment you are purchasing that it indeed has such support. The next common mistake is when you place the DVR in a poorly ventilated room. This often happens when people hide the DVR in cabinets. Metal ones in safes. The DVR should operate at a temperature from 0 to plus 55 degrees Celsius. Accordingly, if the temperature is higher, your recorder will overheat, the hard drive will constantly be running hot, and sooner or later, the DVR itself will burn out. Therefore, if you plan to store it somewhere, in some drawer, it's best to place a thermometer there during peak summertime, if sunlight reaches that spot. Precisely at that time, to measure the temperature to see if it exceeds 55 degrees or not. If not, then you have nothing to worry about. The next common mistake is not formatting. Hard drive. If you purchase a video surveillance system with a hard drive, for example, here we have the ISON Moha PRO, the drive will already be installed and formatted and there will be no issues. But some people buy the hard drive themselves. Or for instance, if you have one left over from an old surveillance system, it must be formatted. And it often happens that a person just installs the hard drive, thinks that recording has started, the recording is going, a few months pass, and then a thief comes during lunch. The person goes to check the recording and it's not there because the hard drive wasn't formatted. Therefore, if you install a hard drive, make sure to format it. If you purchase a ready-made video surveillance system, specifically here with all the ISON models that we have already reviewed, models with a hard drive, there is no such hassle. It is already formatted and ready to work. The next common mistake is when you install a Wi-Fi surveillance camera outside with a standard internal power supply. The internal power supply that comes with all the cameras looks like this. That is, it's a regular plastic power supply. It can only be used indoors. It cannot be installed outside. For outdoor use, a specialized outdoor power supply is required. Here, specifically on the ISON IP50 ELP model, it is shown. Accordingly, the installation based on an outdoor power supply is shown. We have a separate review on our channel about the installation of surveillance cameras. Watch it in full. There, we clearly demonstrate how to mount this camera on the base and with an outdoor power supply. And it goes on. We have quite a large set of common mistakes regarding cables. There are indeed several popular mistakes here. Let's start with the fact that often people, during the construction phase of a house, they turn to some electrician or they go to the store themselves and try to choose some kind of universal cable, so that later, when the house is completed, they can use it to select some equipment. And here you might encounter a situation where you install a cable that is not suitable for your surveillance cameras, because cables differ, they differ in several parameters. Often people lay down a regular coaxial cable and then want to install 8 megapixel surveillance. High quality with zoom, for example, ISON X, but these models require a special category of coaxial cable, meaning high quality is needed, and it differs in quality. Both twisted pair and coaxial cable differ. They are cheap. There are medium priced ones and there are expensive ones, cheap ones. I'm not saying they are completely bad for surveillance. They can be suitable for some simple cameras with 1 megapixel, 2 megapixels. But if you want to install a good quality camera with 5 megapixels, 8 megapixels, maybe with zoom, maybe with a microphone, maybe a rotating one, it's best to find out in advance what cable you will need for them. That is, the correct installation of a surveillance system implies that you first select your surveillance equipment. Ask in the store what cable is needed, or even better, purchase this cable in the same store. Ask the managers for a link to the exact cable that fits, and then you will protect yourself from buying the wrong one. In the end, you might install the surveillance system and it won't work, or it will work with issues. It's a common situation where the camera worked for an hour, then turned off, and you need to climb up and restart it. People think they have bad equipment and contact the store for warranty service. In the store, they connect it with a proper cable and everything works perfectly. It's a very common situation, also common when you need to install, for example, 6 cameras. 5 of them will be at a distance of 20 meters, 25, maybe the 6th radar camera at a distance. There, 40 meters, 50 meters. And you need to understand that a 20-meter cable and a 50-meter cable, these are 2 different cables. That is, a 50-meter cable should be of higher quality with a thicker core. All video surveillance specialists know this situation, and it often happens that people buy one roll of cable which is initially designed for surveillance cameras at a distance of up to 20 meters, up to 30 meters. And then it turns out that several cameras need to be placed at a distance of 50 meters, and people lay down this same cable, and the situation arises where you bought surveillance for 6 cameras, 5 of your cameras work fine, but the 6th camera doesn't work. Why? Because the wrong cable was laid for it. Another standard recommendation from electricians. Ideally, it is necessary to separate the power cable from the low voltage cable, meaning they should not be run through the same box, they need to be routed separately. Also, a typical situation requires providing UV protection. As for the cable related to ISON equipment, all of it, whether included in kits or purchased separately, already has this protection. If you purchase from another store, be sure to check if the cable you are buying has UV protection. Otherwise, the cable will crack. And then problems with the night lighting will start again. First, and then the camera will simply stop turning on. And another common mistake is when people want to embed this little wire, this part of the camera, into the wall. And this is a mistake, because you should be able to remove the surveillance camera at any time. That is, a warranty case might occur, or the camera might simply reach the end of its lifespan and you need to replace it. You mount the camera through the base. That is, the connection point with the connector is located near the camera itself. You spend 5 minutes and replace the surveillance camera with a new one accordingly. If you didn't do this, and instead embedded this part into the wall, thinking it simply looks nicer, you should understand that you will have to destroy the entire wall to retrieve this part. And sooner or later, will you need it? In any case, you will need to retrieve it because cameras also have their lifespan. If we are talking about AIS cameras, they are designed for 5 to 10 years. This is based on 24/7 operation respectively. If it's with the original uninterruptible power supply and with the original bases, you will achieve the maximum lifespan. So you need to understand that sooner or later you will be replacing your surveillance cameras. Therefore, it's best to install them correctly with the connector located near the camera itself. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channels and don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it.